There is a document that came out yesterday that you need to know about. And the reason you need to know about it is not just because of what it says, but because of who is saying it and why they are saying it now. Monday, February 9th, 2026, Berlin, Germany. The Munich Security Conference Foundation releases its annual flagship report, 122 pages. And according to Xinhua News, People's Daily, the official Munich Security Conference website, Tavima, and dozens of other outlets, the title is Under Destruction, not under threat, not under pressure, under destruction. And according to the official report available on the Munich Security Conference website, the very first sentence reads, "The world has entered a period of wrecking ball politics. Sweeping destruction, rather than careful reforms and policy corrections, is the order of the day." Now, before we get into what that means, let me tell you what the Munich Security Conference actually is. According to the Munich Security Conference's own description, this is the world's most important security policy gathering. Every February, presidents, prime ministers, foreign ministers, defense chiefs, NATO officials, military commanders, and intelligence leaders converge on Munich's Bayerischer Hof Hotel. According to Tavima and other reporting, this year's conference runs from February 13th to 15th. Nearly 50 heads of state and government are expected to attend. And traditionally, the Munich Security Report serves as the conversation starter for those discussions. This is not a think tank producing op-eds. This is not a university research project. This is the official analysis document of the most consequential annual gathering of Western security leadership on the planet. And this year, that document says we are living through wrecking ball politics, and the post-1945 international order is under destruction. According to the official report published on the Munich Security Conference website, more than 80 years after construction began, the U.S.-led post-1945 international order is now under destruction. And according to multiple passages from the report cited across news outlets, the report explicitly states that the most prominent of those who promised to free their country from the existing order's constraints is the current U.S. administration, not Russia, not China. The current U.S. administration is identified as the most prominent force dismantling the international order that the United States itself built. Let that sink in for a moment. The Munich Security Conference, the gathering where Western alliance leaders coordinate security policy, has published an official report stating that the President of the United States is the primary demolition force destroying the international order. According to the report's own language as quoted on the official website and in Xinhua reporting, the most powerful of those who take the axe to existing rules and institutions is U.S. President Donald Trump. And the report continues, this is not only because of his personal convictions or his outsized personality, but because the United States still holds extraordinary political, economic, military, and technological power. Ironically, the president of the country that did more than any other to shape, sustain, and defend the post-1945 international order is now at the forefront of dismantling it. Now, you might say, this is just European hand-wringing. They don't like Trump's policies, so they are complaining. But here is why that interpretation misses the point. This report is not complaining about policy disagreements. It is documenting structural demolition. According to the official Munich Security Conference report, throughout the document, they use specific terminology. Bulldozers, wrecking balls, chainsaws, demolition, destruction. This is not the language of policy critique. This is the language of architecture being torn down. And according to one of the report's most striking observations, as quoted in Tavima and on the official website, in an era of wrecking ball politics, those who simply stand by are at constant risk of entombment. Entombment, not disadvantage, not challenge. Entombment. The report is warning that allies who do not actively respond risk being buried in the rubble. And according to the Munich Security Index 2026, which is included in this report and cited on the official MSC website, in all G7 countries surveyed, only a tiny proportion of respondents say that their current government's policies will make future generations better off. This is a crisis of confidence across all major Western democracies. And according to the report's analysis, that crisis has created an environment where those who employ bulldozers, wrecking balls, and chainsaws are often cautiously admired, if not openly celebrated. So the report is diagnosing not just American policy, but a broader Western condition where destruction has become politically popular because people have lost faith that reform is possible. But here is the part that should get the most attention, and it is the part that explains why this report matters so much right now. According to Munich Security Conference Chairman Wolfgang Ischinger, as quoted in Xinhua reporting, the attention the conference is attracting this year is not only a reflection of the many conflicts and crises that dominate the global agenda, but also a result of the changing role of the United States, That is the chairman of the Munich Security Conference saying that the reason everyone is paying attention this year is because America's role in the world has fundamentally changed. And according to DeVima's reporting on the conference, Wolfgang Ischinger has stated that transatlantic relations are in a considerable crisis of trust and credibility. Not strained, not tense, in crisis. Now, let me tell you who is attending this conference this week, according to the verified reporting. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, and from the United States, according to Tuvima and other outlets, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will lead what organizers described as a sizable delegation, including more than 50 members of Congress and the governors of Michigan and California. So the American delegation is massive. But they are walking into a conference where the official framing document says American leadership is the primary force demolishing the international order. That is not a comfortable position. According to the Munich Security Report, as published on the official website, the report asks a fundamental question. Will this destruction actually clear the ground for policies that will increase security, prosperity, and freedom? And according to the report's own analysis, it remains unclear. Instead, the world may see a shift toward transactional deals over principled cooperation, private interests over public good, and regional hegemons over universal norms. Transactional deals over principled cooperation. That is the Munich Security Conference describing what American foreign policy has become. Not partnership, transactions. And here is where the report moves from diagnosis to warning. According to extensive quotes from the official MSC publication, the report states that governments in Europe and other parts of the world are slowly recognizing that hope is not a strategy. If they continue to be bystanders to wrecking ball politics, they may well end up at the mercy of great power politics and should not be surprised if they soon find the order they cherished in rubble. Hope is not a strategy. That sentence should be read very carefully. The Munich Security Conference is telling European governments that waiting for American policy to stabilize is not a plan, that assuming things will return to normal is dangerous, that they need to act now or accept that the structures they depend on will be destroyed. And according to the report, more actors around the world have started to think about ways to buffer, if not resist, the Trump administration's most destructive actions. Buffer or resist. The Munich Security Conference is openly discussing how allies should resist American policy. We have documented this pattern extensively. German investment in the United States collapsing. Canada signing 12 trade deals in 6 months. $155 billion in Canadian counter tariffs. The NDP calling to cancel F-35 purchases. J.D. Vance booed at the Olympics. Trump threatening to block the Gordie Howe Bridge. And now the official report of the world's most important security conference states that the international order is under destruction, and the United States is the primary demolition force. According to the Munich Security Report, in the economic realm, this has manifested in the unprecedented number of new, resumed, and concluded trade negotiations that defy Trump's assault on the rules of open trade. Unprecedented trade negotiations that defy American policy. The report is documenting active resistance. And according to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, as quoted in the official MSC report, the rest of the world is not powerless, but is able to respond to the mounting challenges. The German Chancellor is saying Europe can respond, not must accept, can respond. Here is what makes this moment different from previous periods of transatlantic tension. During the first Trump administration, European leaders mostly waited. They assumed it was temporary. They believed that if they just held on, American policy would stabilize after the next election. According to the Munich Security Report, that assumption is dead. The report explicitly warns against being bystanders. It calls for actors to fortify essential structures, draw up new sustainable designs, and become bold builders themselves. Fortify, draw up new designs, become builders. This is not the language of waiting for America to change course. This is the language of building alternatives. And according to the report's analysis of current dynamics, it states that actors still invested in the international order are organizing, trying to contain the effects of wrecking ball politics, and probing new approaches that do not depend on Washington's lead. Do not depend on Washington's lead. The Munich Security Conference is openly discussing how to build security structures that do not depend on American leadership. Now, all of this happens against a specific and urgent backdrop. According to the Munich Security Report itself, the report includes extensive analysis of European security challenges, including Ukraine, NATO, defense spending, deterrence posture, and alliance cohesion. And according to reporting on conference attendees, Ukrainian President Zelensky will be there alongside NATO leadership and dozens of foreign ministers. So this is not an academic exercise happening in a seminar room. This is happening in the middle of active war, active alliance management, active security crises, where real decisions with real consequences must be made. And the official position document for the gathering, where all of these leaders will coordinate, says the United States is demolishing the order and allies need to build alternatives that do not depend on Washington. The question every person watching should be asking is this: if the Munich Security Conference, representing the institutional heart of Western alliance coordination, has concluded that the international order is under destruction by the United States and that allies risk entombment if they remain bystanders, what comes next? Because once you diagnose demolition in an official strategic document, once you warn explicitly against entombment, once you call for fortification and new architectural designs that do not depend on American leadership, you are not describing a temporary policy disagreement that will resolve itself. You are describing the end of an era and the beginning of something fundamentally different. According to the report, containing the worst expressions of a policy of destruction will require actors to step up, hone their tools, draw up more sustainable designs, and become bolder builders themselves. Step up, hone tools, draw up designs, become builders. That is the roadmap. This is not Europe complaining about American policy decisions they disagree with. This is Europe planning for a future without reliable American leadership. And the plan, according to the official 122-page document that will frame this week's discussions among 50 heads of state and government, is to build structures that can survive American wrecking ball politics. The Munich Security Conference begins in 4 days. The report is public. The diagnosis is clear: under destruction. And every ally will be reading it.